Well, you guys are going to be happy with the new website. I saw a little preview today. It's looking pretty spiffy. All right, there we are. I have it up. All right, somebody just joined.
Do we have to join by Zoom?
No, you don't.
We don't? Okay.
Good.
No,
I'm not.
it's just when you speak, you got to point kind of sort of in my direction so people can see, hear, and whatnot. All right. I can't see, it says recording and on live on YouTube. So I'm going to call this meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. April 7th, 2021. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a roll call, please, sir?
Ms. Combs,
Here.
Mr. Ricks here, Mr. Smith here, Mr. Swayze,
Here.
Mr. Underwood.
Here, I'd like to state for the record that all board members are attending in person. Now, 3.0, modification of approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to modify or approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, call for the vote, please, sir.
Ms. Combs,
Aye.
Mr. Ricks. Aye. Mr. Smith, aye. Mr. Swayze,
Aye.
Mr. Underwood.
Aye, motion carries. Agenda is approved. Brings us to 4.1, 2020-2021 supplemental budget. So for those of you that are wondering why we're doing another budget thing, we got $52,000. Please correct me anytime, Miss Petrikaitis. I actually heard her say it out loud, so now I can actually pronounce it.
It is a tricky one.
We got $52,000 of unexpected revenue from the state for budget stabilization factor buy down. And we also got the $100,000 early learning grant money in. And that does not require us to have a supplemental budget if we don't spend it. The PHE principal wants to start spending some of that ELG money for materials and the consultant salary. And so in order for us to spend that money, we have to supplement the budget. This is first read. I believe Ms. Petrikaitis put into the budget that we are going to spend, or we, with this new appropriations resolution, would be allowed to spend the entirety of the $100,000 that we're going to get this year. We don't think it's going to be there based on some of the traffic that we've seen, but that's, we just figured it's ELG, it's being tracked in a separate fund, Fund 22, if y'all remember that. So questions, comments, discussion. Okay, so for those of you that, well, I want to state this for the record, is that everyone remembers the statement from the auditor at the last board meeting. And he threw out a number, and it was roughly $200,000 that we have in the fund reserve, fund balance at the end of last fiscal year. Current budget projections indicate that we will have $370,000. I'm looking for a north-south. Yeah. $370,000 in the fund balance at the end of this current fiscal year. So even though we've struggled with revenue, and even though the COVID hit us, because of what the current superintendent has done with staffing, and obviously due to the COVID, we've saved a good chunk of money on fuel. We're able to put roughly $270,000 into the fund balance this year. Now, we all know the auditor wants us to have 3 months operating reserve in the fund balance. On top of Tabor, roughly that number is $1 million. If the state can maintain its revenue at its current rate, and and our administration can continue to save that kind of money, the math says that by the end of fiscal year 24-25, we will have more than $1 million in the fund balance. And if you remember, we just recently passed a policy that says that was our goal. So kudos to Ms. Petrikaitis and Mr. McNerney for doing lots of good work to that effect. And based on some conversations that I've had, I also want to commend the staff for doing their part in this too. They realize that we're crunched for funds, and they are willing participants in our effort to save money. Okay, anything else on supplemental budget for this current fiscal year? All right, does anyone object to moving it forward to second read at our next regular board meeting? Okay, then it shall be so. So then that brings us to 5.1, Superintendent Search Committee Guidance. Do I have a motion to approve 5.1?
Make a motion to approve 5.1.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a second? Thank you, sir. Discussion. So based on the numbers that I just talked about, 370K at the end of this fiscal year, and current, and I have to condition this. Okay, this is really important condition. Based on current revenue projections, they're fairly, Pat, would you say fairly mature? The revenue projections, but they aren't written in stone because the legislature hasn't passed the School Finance Act. But based on that math, if we go single roll, we can add 150K next year to the fund balance, which would bring us to what, 520? Or if we go dual roll, we can add 240K, which would bring us to 610. So that's really the decision that we're making now. Is how much do we want to put in the fund balance? How much is having a single role superintendent worth to us as a board? I want to state for the record before I stop talking that on my entire time in this district as a parent and as a board member, we have never had a single role superintendent. And quite frankly, I'd just like to see what that looks like, because we have asked people of the dedication level of Tim to do, well, we've asked them to basically try to do the impossible, which is fully execute the duties of superintendent and fully execute the duties as principal. And in one way, shape, or form, I believe we've always fallen short. And I think our standards are high enough that we need to expect the performance that a single role superintendent could give us. My opinion, now that I strongly believe that we can afford it, that is my recommendation, which is why I called this special meeting, because I don't want the superintendent search committee to get the rug yanked out of them at the last instant again. So please, somebody else, everybody else, chime in.
I think that looking at the difficulties the district has had with the dual role, and I've been here within the district 9 years with kids in directly alongside the kids in school and on the board. I think at this point we would be penny wise and pound foolish to go with a dual role. We need somebody that can attend to the business of the district, and that should not be our business manager solely. We need that superintendent that can help manage the district. And the last audit report showed us how inadequate the last one did that. And I don't think we should set the next one up for any type of failure or the district up for failure, as I look at it strategically. And that 3 months reserve, you know, I've been hearing that for 7 years when I've gone to board meetings, and the auditors say it's really, really important. And I think it's an important goal,
Ma'am, your input. Based on the ebb and the flow of revenue and expenditures, how much do you really feel we need to have in the fund balance so that we don't have to get a zero interest loan to cover payroll or whatever? I know I'm putting you on the spot. I apologize.
I'm not good at that.
2 months, half a mil.
I'm comfortable with 2 months. I'm with the forecasted numbers, what we're looking at the end of this fiscal year. And what I put together was conservative, and I know it was for specific reasons, because I need to stay that way. But I feel comfortable at the end of this year that, yes, we are able to afford going single role. And based on what we forecast so far in the next year's budget, state all being the same, I feel comfortable that we will be able to, put another 150 to 200 in there going forward.
Okay, now
And at that rate,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
no, at that rate, we continue to build it, and I am comfortable that we will be able to get where we need to be.
Awesome. So another thing I want to add is that when I asked Mrs. Petrikaitis to put those numbers together, I asked her to build in significant pay increases for the staff. So for those of you that haven't been keeping track, last year, nobody got a step. So what we're talking about is for classified staff, 2 steps this year. And for certified staff, we're talking about significant increase in the base, more than just 1 step, almost 2 steps, and also giving them a step. And so with all those pay increases, we still have that number of 150 single roll, 250 dual roll. Questions?
Well, part of it is I don't think there's really much of a discussion on how we feel about the single role. We've already been down that road.
I think it's a matter of whether or not we feel we can afford it.
Well, right. But now that we know that we can, we've already passed the resolution before to go single role because we all support that idea, unless something's changed. I think it was just more of the discussion, can we afford it? And now that the numbers are showing
Correct.
that we can, I feel that we owe it to our community and our students, our staff, Ms. Petrikaitis, and the people that have been putting so much into this district to kind of alleviate some of the weight that everyone's been sharing by going single role.
I concur.
Sir, thoughts?
I'd love to have single role. I really would. But I think we still have a problem. I think we need to look at this and see if for at least 1 year, we shouldn't have dual role so that we can make sure that individual is what we want in that position so that he can continue or she can continue where we are. I don't want to all of a sudden get a superintendent in here and now all of a sudden we're not down the same
Performing.
path we're at.
Right.
I don't want them coming in and screwing something up because I think we have turned this district around with Mr. McNerney and the staff, and I don't want it screwed up.
Now, my only counter to that is that, again, when someone gets thrust into a dual role position, they have to choose, they have to prioritize
True.
which tasks are more important to them. And the next person we get may not prioritize the rigor and the processes and the systems related to education as highly as they do something else, as highly as Mr. McNerney has in the past year. Right. And so I think that's where you're really going. You want to make sure that with respect to rigor and systems in the delivery of education to our students, that cannot be compromised.
Cannot.
It cannot.
I think if we went with a dual role, we're compromising that
My concurrence.
because I don't want. to
I
overload
think
them.
you guys are missing something. Stop and think
Okay.
about this.
Tell me
Who has control? Who has control? We have control.
we do.
We have control. If it's a superintendent, all we can do is tell the superintendent. If it's a superintendent principal, we can tell superintendent who is the principal, no, you are going down the wrong path. That's one thing. That's one thing.
Okay, now, my only counter to that one is, again, the board is not supposed to be involved in operations. And so if we give the dual role superintendent principal direction on how to operate as a principal, that it could definitely be construed that way. But I see your point. We do have control, but I think we have control either way, personally. If we give that regular feedback to the superintendent, we see things in the school not going right. Hey, you need to talk to your principal because these are the things that we're seeing and hearing. That's one way we could exercise control. But I see your point. It's a valid point. In a dual role, we have more control over the delivery of education. It's a valid point.
I've seen this district and I don't want to fall apart like it was.
I'm with you.
I don't.
I firmly believe that if we have a dual role, that we are setting the district up to fall apart, because in a dual role position, we are gonna have to choose either our business sacrifices or our student sacrifice. Something's gotta give. And I agree with Mr. Underwood. If we have a superintendent, we can press him to tend to his principal. And we've discovered from our previous superintendent who we pressed on principal issues. And he kind of pushed back and said, well, that's operations. Well, that superintendent is our one employee. We can push on him and expect him to push on his, whoever works for him.
And if we set up goals related to education to the superintendent, single or dual role, and grade that superintendent on those goals, he or she is going to have motivation to make sure that the delivery, proper and complete and correct delivery of education to our students does not suffer. If we structure his goals right, or her.
What are your
Goals, right.
thoughts, Tim?
That's a great question.
So, I mean, on the carpet, single roles where it's at. That's what I told you
Mhm.
I would do.
Yep.
Single roles where it's at. Everything you have mentioned with instruction, we have been challenged this year. I'm not gonna belittle or beget what we've already said. I agree with. The challenge, I do agree with Ed, is with a dual role, you do paraphrased a lot of discussion. You do have direct supervision over it. And it is a much quicker influence because it is one person, not two, and monitoring that. I only look from a management level, like all you do, is much quicker. When I talk as a dual, you know it's going to happen because it's me,
Yeah.
superintendent and principal. But it is why I said dual, single, because we're giving up kids. And that's, I mean, pay me now or pay me later. I think with this and what Pat and I have done, you're in a position for sustainability. This is not a flash in the pan. The numbers that have been compiled are 2024. And with what the auditor said, and I say this just because I think it validates the affirmation of single versus dual, in my opinion. And it's just one. So if you can do it, it needs to get going because
Yeah.
the hiring season for principals is right now.
And if
And
we get a
so-
like-minded superintendent, they would hopefully get a like-minded principal as their support team.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Well, see, so that's something I want to talk about is I think based on what Tim just said, the prime time hiring season for principals is now. I think we need to move forward hiring a principal now, regardless of where we go with superintendent, unless we go dual role. I mean, if we're going to go single role, I think we got to open principal. This week.
That's what I was gonna keep
okay.
telling you, and that's what I was gonna suggest is he needs to get a principal now.
But we gotta, in order, before he can get a principal, we gotta decide on single role. Because once we decide single role, he can do his operations.
No, I
principal.
agree, and
Yeah,
that's
let's
what
do
I
that.
was trying
Let's
to
get it
keep
going.
going.
Let's get it going.
So the only thing I would contest that if I'm an applicant and I'm sitting out there as superintendent, this is gonna be my shadow. and it's forecasted and not likely, but having been in it 31 years, my first question are what are systems in place and who's my partner?
Mhm.
Do I want to inherit that? Or is that going to allow me to bring in who I want? And
And that's also a
I'm
hiring.
sorry, that would be my first question is, who's at the high school right now? How long have they been there? 2 weeks.
Let me ask this question. If, I know we got a lot of hiring seasons we're up, but if we hire a super, say, in 6 weeks, would they be equipped or have a field where they can hire a principal after them that they can be comfortable with?
I think I came and I have talked with many of you. I came May 20, well, right before graduation in 2018, the day before I got hired. Again, the season is now, you stretching it if you wait till June. I just will
Right.
say, but if that means the stream of applicants gets to say, I get to hire my own chief of command, and I get to bring in the
So
system.
your position, let me see, because I got to put it in my words, right? You know how my brain works, is that you think that a clean slate is preferable for the new super to be able to hire the principal of their choice, the dean of their choice.
I personally, if I'm walking in, I don't want to spend a year saying this is what I inherited. Now,
Mhm.
they're not going to have that.
Right.
For the record,
Ma'am,
Is there a reason we couldn't post for it and put out and collect that pool of applicants for the principalship to begin with, though?
so this is my opinion. My quick answer is no, but I have to explain it. And that is, if we vote here tonight to go single roll, then however he wants to handle it is how he can handle it. And if he wants to post for principal and then collect the pool of applicants and then let the new super, once we hire that super, pick from that pool,
I
that's
like that.
that's a superintendent responsibility, not a board responsibility.
But at least they have a pool to
Yes.
begin with.
And it's starting the process sooner than later.
then we're not waiting.
Yes.
Right.
We're gonna go with vice principal too then.
Dean, I think
would
is what we
rather
put
do
into the
assistant
budget.
principal.
Dean is what we put in the budget. Now, we could go assistant principal, but then that'll lower that 150 number to 100.
But we don't have to make that decision tonight.
No. Nope, that's budget prep. Right? So whatever the two of them put together for budget prep, we will review and either agree to or disagree to.
Ideally, I think to get the right people in place, especially with Tim not being here, assistant principal. would
That
probably-
was his recommendation.
I mean, just because we want to be able to keep the rigor and the systems in place and the right, support system in the administration for the students and the education. So I mean, definitely, like he said, whatever we get in budget prep, but I'd like to see it played with a little bit Dean versus this and get a couple variations.
And again,
And of
just
course,
as
it
long
also
as
depends on who we
everyone
get in
here,
there for superintendent, how strong of people we get in those other roles also will determine it.
right, and as long as everyone here agrees that this is not a zero-sum game, right? Like hiring an AP will have a negative financial impact, but will have positive impacts elsewhere. And then doing the opposite, hiring a dean will have what we currently expect to be the financial impact, which based on the numbers we put together so far is none, but it may not have as big of an impact on education and discipline and all the other stuff.
Well, who's to say that we couldn't even, start with the dean process, and if that person proves themselves, and as we build up that budget, offer them a promotion down the road, saying, all right.
Yeah,
hey,
there's definitely
you know,
some options.
That way, we know.
What
not
we're getting.
shooting
Right.
ourselves in the foot either.
But we did pass an action a couple meetings ago where we laid out the administrative structure that we want to see. And that action was single role superintendent, principal of the junior senior high school, dean at the junior senior high school, full-time principal at PHE. So if we want to change that, we just got to go back and change our action. But right now, that is what's on the table. And again, if they want to propose something different, if Tim thinks it's just absolutely necessary to have an AP when he puts the budget together, make sure that that's highlighted. We approve the budget. That's one way we can overrule our previous action.
Okay. Well, I definitely think single.
What's the
role's way to go.
difference between a dean and an assistant principal?
Licensure.
Mhm.
So type D is what you pay for. And that is for coverages, for activities, for evaluations, for the whole gamut. A dean is discipline and that's it.
Right, a dean cannot evaluate teachers.
So you can't, see, I don't see the advantage to a dean. I do not.
You
see
think
it.
AP is the way to go?
Myself, I don't agree with the dean. I do not.
I
I
personally do
don't
not
agree with the
either.
dean.
You think the dean adds no value with a
The-
full-time principal?
The dean has no value, not in this little school.
I agree.
If we were a big school, yeah, we need a dean.
Mhm.
But we're in a little school. We need that. We need more authority
Mhm.
so that the
checks and
superintendent can be
balances.
over in Prairie
Yes.
Heights at least half the time
Right.
More-
as. half
So
the time here.
do you land with an AP? Or are you satisfied with a full-time principal?
I don't know.
But that's down the road. That's down the road stuff,
Mhm.
right? We don't have to talk about it tonight.
I don't want what Mr. Mick has got
To
here
go
now
away.
to fall apart. I don't want that.
None of us do.
Well, then we need to make sure that contract is clad tight.
Yep.
Where if the guy's not doing what we like, buy, and we're not
Mhm.
buying him out.
So then do
Just
we
buy.
want to not consider a 2-year base contract like we currently are
I would
considering?
do 1 year
I think-
with incentive.
I think we need to go 2-year. Because here's the reason I think we need to go 2-year.
Would most of them come down here for a 1 year?
That's why, and with a
Yeah,
2-year,
right.
we have to show commitment to them.
That's right.
But we can put, as we make this 2-year contract, we can put something in there about, this first year is really, you have a 2-year commitment from us, but you gotta be committed to us. And if you're not meeting the mark, we need an out. And we need to make that clear up front. But if they come in that first year,
Okay,
they're
then
performing,
we're gonna have to modify the contract.
they're gonna have to know they got a second year. But
Yeah,
if they come in here with only a 1 year and that's all that's guaranteed, we're gonna get 1 year performance, which is not very good.
I agree with the way you're putting that. They come in here with a 2-year contract, but after the first year, they're getting evaluated. And if they did an awesome job and kept up the rigor and everything, then you got your second year. We might even extend it
Well,
to
I
a third.
wouldn't say necessarily say awesome. I would say maintained. We want that
Satisfactory.
maintenance because as I look at awesome.
All right, maintain,
Because we don't want to set them up for failure either,
but
but
no
we want commitment.
sliding back.
Because like I said, a 1 year contract, we're gonna get a 1 year performance, which is
Right.
not very good.
Commitment's a two-way street.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Commitment's a two-way street.
So this is an enlightening conversation, but we have another meeting supposed to start in about 1 minute. Is there anything else that we need to add? Is everyone having all the information they need to vote?
And the vote is to go back to single roll,
Yes.
to be clear.
So if you remember the Monday before last, we gave the
Right.
superintendent search committee guidance. And there were 6 bullets in there.
Right, I was just saying for the record.
Yes. And so what we've done in this direct round of direction is to change from dual role to single role. Everything else is staying the same. So right now, that means a 2-year contract with a 3rd-year option. Okay, now we want to go back on that when you talk about it soon. I don't disagree with your point, but at the same time, I see their point.
Well, and it's always, we still have the option of accountability anyway.
Sure.
Just because we're in that 2-year contract, if you have poor performance, you're still hitting the pavement.
We just have to write that
Without a
Please go.
buyout, without a buyout.
And that's
I don't want to
where,
pay nobody because they can't perform. I
Absolutely.
hate that with a passion. And we've done that.
so we can do
Yeah,
that
we've done
via
that with the
contract.
last 2, but I don't want to do
Now,
that.
the key to that too is we got, like he said, we got to keep the paperwork.
We have
If we believe that superintendent isn't performing,
We have to do our job.
we have to meet with him quarterly and we
If
have
not
to say,
more.
if not more, and say, hey, we need you to perform this
Yeah.
and be better. Because we don't keep any paperwork on it,
It's on us.
it's on us. So we need to step up our game as a board.
Yep.
And that administrative personnel matters.
The
With our
paperwork,
one employee.
the paperwork stays at the HR office.
Yes.
It's not gonna stay in any of our houses.
With
It stays
access
with
to
No.
HR.
nobody,
Now that we have an HR
no
office.
personnel records to no
Right.
third party.
I wanna make sure.
But I don't, just to beat a dead horse, you guys, I've tried to bring a lot of stuff HR wise, and unfortunately I was one of five, and we don't need to make that mistake again.
No,
We're on the path to fixing it.
Correct. Anything else before we vote?
No.
You sure? You good?
well, we're fine.
Okay. Call for the vote, please, sir.
Ms. Combs,
I,
Mr. Ricks,
Aye.
Mr. Smith, aye. Mr. Swayze,
Aye.
Mr. Underwood.
Aye, motion carries. We have a single role superintendent posting coming up. All right, that brings us to other business. Is there any other business?
No.
Yes, there is.
oh,
I would encourage, I wish there were more people listening. I don't know how many people are watching on YouTube. But I want to encourage everyone to go out onto the internet and do research on Colorado's Senate Bill 182. As currently proposed, Senate Bill 182 will basically allow students to commit felonies. Oh, it folded
It's gone.
last night after I prepared this whole thing.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
9
news for
o'clock
us.
this
Thank you.
morning, it was gone.
It's done.
nice.
Well, hey, you can record your diatribe and send it out to people later.
Contact your local representative is what I was going to say. And tell them your opinion of that bill. Thank you.
As if they would listen.
Chop people.
Man, this was going to be good.
Read his soapbox.
All right, that brings us to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're adjourned.